Hello, this is Marco Palmero. If you are a search fund struggling to find good deals, off-market deals, then this video is for you. If you're a search fund struggling to find investors for your deals, then this video is for you. I want to talk about how we can help search fund in finding prospects, both deals and investors. But before we do that, I want to take a step back and talk about the most common challenges in some of the feedbacks that we collected from people like yourself that were struggling with this issue. And at the same time, I want to share my personal experience building our pipeline of deals, because originally our firm is born as a M&A firm. And so as we developed our business, we needed to find a predictable way for sourcing deals across different sectors and geographies. So I'm going to be sharing both other people's feedback, my personal feedback, in the challenges that I'm sure you are facing if you are a search fund or somebody looking to get into this entrepreneurship through acquisition model. So a very common challenge that people face is the fact that it is becoming increasingly hard to find quality deal flow. Some particular markets are becoming very saturated, not all of them. But in addition to that, it is hard to manage all their pipelines if they're working with a small team, or maybe they're even working alone. And this creates I would say not one, but multiple layers of complexity into the search fund process, because it takes time away from the most important thing, which is closing deals and negotiating deals. And so most search funds are juggling their time between filling their pipeline of potential deals and investors, and at the same time taking meetings with prospects that are on target in trying to close both the deals and the capital for their own acquisition. As you can imagine, and I'm sure that if you are in this industry, you can relate to this challenge. It is very hard to do all these things well, and invariably, a lot of people become overwhelmed with the process. It becomes very difficult for them to follow up effectively with people, to be very proactive in their approach, and ultimately a lot of data gets lost, and it is not easy to streamline the process of finding, selecting, and closing deals or investors for that matter. So many people try to use alternative solutions to solve these problems. I'm thinking about online databases and other tools that can support them on this journey. The problem is they're still the focal point of all these efforts. So they are the ones, or their team is the one doing the output and taking care of all these processes, all these channels, all these lead generation sources, if we want to call them this way. And that creates unnecessary complexity for the entire system. I would say search funds should invest most of their time towards talking with motivated sellers and talking with qualified investors, so that they can get the highest ROI on their time and avoid investing most of the time keeping their pipeline full and then being overwhelmed with information and not delivering 100% in these few meetings that are the ones that matter the most. So we helped a few people find deal flow and investors because our deal origination service applies to multiple industries, including private equity, venture capital, companies that are looking for acquisitions, but also search funds like the one that you might be. What is the advantage of all this? Well, taking the origination process off your shoulder enables you to focus on what you do best, which is closing transactions. And also, from my perspective, it enables you to focus on the high ROI activities in your business. Because ultimately, if you're a search fund and you're looking to close this deal, all that matters is talking with people that are on target, that match your criteria, and that can ultimately become your deal, right? Or at the same time, talk with qualified investors that are actively interested in potentially committing capital to the project. There's no point in allocating time towards bringing more people into your pipeline because they're less of a priority. And many people realize this sooner or later. And then it becomes a question of, how do I solve this problem? Now, my perspective is that this is just a lead generation issue. So it is actually a lot simpler than it might sound. But of course, it is not something that you can tackle on your own. And that's why we, most of the times, help people, search funds, in finding qualified deals, finding off-market deals, and in some instances, even investors for their transactions. Now, I think when looking at deal flow and how to find it, or investors and how to find them, there are really two approaches that we can take towards finding these deals, finding these leads, if we want to call them this way. And it all comes down to how qualified you want the prospect to be. So if you want very qualified prospects in your pipeline, then the process that we need to follow is very tight, and it needs to have multiple layers of qualification, of filtering. And I recorded a video on our website that has a technical breakdown of how we would map out something like that. You can go check it out if you're interested in it. But the point is, it goes without saying that the more qualified the opportunity, the tighter the funnel needs to be. The less qualified the opportunity, the less friction we need to add into your pipeline. It all comes down to, what is it that you're trying to accomplish, and what is the problem that you actually have? Some people might say, I don't have enough inflow, so I need to talk with more people. I need to book more calls. Well, in that case, we can help. And it becomes a friction problem. So how do we narrow down on the people that are a target and then fill your calendar with those people? Others might have the opposite problem, which is, I'm talking with a lot of people, but not a lot of them are on target. And therefore, the solution becomes, how do we tighten up your process so that you can only speak with people that are actually on target? And there are different ways to do that, right? You can work in the funnel, or you can work at the beginning of the funnel, because of course, the quality of the people that you bring into your system will also determine how much filtering you need to do. If you are very specific in your search and the criteria that you use to identify these leads, then it becomes less difficult to filter them because they're already pre-qualified from the very beginning. And that becomes a question of, do you know specifically what it is that you're targeting? There's a huge difference between saying I'm targeting home health facilities across the US and saying I'm targeting HVAC companies in the state of Florida, more specifically from Tampa to Miami. You get what I'm saying, right? Based on that, the overall structure of your pipeline is going to change, and the results that are going to come at the end will be more or less effective, more or less productive, so to speak. Now, in terms of lead generation, I like the idea of starting from the end and then backtracking the effort that needs to go into each lead generation process so that we can make sure we are at least on the trajectory of hitting the target. What do I mean by this? let's say that you're targeting to close one deal in 6 months. Then you might say, okay, in order to close one deal in 6 months, I need to talk with at least 20 motivated sellers, very good deals that are checking all the boxes and they just need to go through my own due diligence process. Okay, cool. Then in order to speak with 20 motivated sellers, how many quasi good deals I need to look at? Maybe you're going to come up with the figure that is 100. Okay, in order to find these quasi good deals, how many companies we need to reach out to? And you might say it's 10 times that. Okay, so we need to find 1,000 companies within a time frame of 6 months in order to achieve that goal. And of course, I'm oversimplifying here, but you get what I'm saying. If we start with a clear objective, then we can understand what is the type of input that we need to make in order to accomplish the result. And the same goes for the investors. In that case, numbers are going to be higher, probably, at least based on my experience. And it all comes down to what is it that you're looking to accomplish, and how specific are you in your own search and your own acquisition journey. Now, getting back to my point of lead generation, why is it helpful for you to focus all your attention on closing instead of finding deals? Because again, it's not only the highest ROI activity for you, but also it saves you time, it saves you resources, and it makes you more effective in these few activities that can actually generate the transaction that you're seeking. And the moment you outsource that process, you become more free. You get freedom and you can focus all your attention on these few tasks that actually move the needle. I've seen quite a lot of people try to outsource this process. Some of them did it successfully, some unsuccessfully. I think in most cases, I've seen that the ones that didn't outsource this struggled a lot in juggling between multiple tasks. And that's just the experience that I've seen talking with a lot of search funds. Unless they had a pretty good team already well structured and people that knew how to find these off-market deals or these investors, it was increasingly hard for them to predictably bring leads into their funnel. And that's why we helped some of them solve this problem. And the reason why we were able to help them is simply because we have sourced deals for many companies and many firms across the globe. We did it for brokers, we did it for venture capital firms, we did it for companies that were expanding through acquisitions, and of course we did it for search funds. We did it in different industries: manufacturing, healthcare, technology, finance, you name it. And the interesting point, and what I've realized over time, and especially in the very beginning when we were building our own proprietary origination system, was that there is no cookie cutter solution. So if you go online or if you go on platforms or communities where people talk about how to find deal flow or how search funds can find deal flow and investors, some people will advise, use platform X, Y, and Z, or go to this place, scrape leads using this solution, and you're going to be good. The problem is that this is a very it's an oversimplification of a process that really involves a deeper analysis, because not all industries are equal, not all countries are equal, and not all channels for finding deals work the same way. There is a huge difference between talking with people via email, talking with people in person, talking with people via phone. In certain industries, certain sellers, certain ethnicities for that matter, are going to be more receptive or less receptive to certain types of messaging and certain types of contacts. And when you go ahead and generate leads, of course, you're not going to rely purely on referrals. You're going to need to do some sort of outreach or kind of like interact with people that you're meeting for the first time, both when you're looking for investors and when you're looking for deals. And so finding out the perfect strategy for your industry and for your objectives becomes key. And that's one of the things that we do when we look at the perfect strategy for helping search funds, finding deals, finding leads. And the ultimate objective is always the same. Once we understand what the goal is, we want to fill your calendar with qualified opportunities that either are motivated sellers, deals in this case, or investors. And it really depends on your needs, right? But it all starts with one, the objective, and then what are the channels that we can utilize to build a system that's going to bring at the bottom of this funnel the most qualified opportunities and the highest amount of opportunities. Again, you may be in two different positions. One is you don't have enough flow. The other is you have too much flow that is not good. In both cases, some adjustment needs to be made. And frankly speaking, if something hasn't worked so far, maybe it's time for you to rethink the strategy and take a look at how you bring leads into your funnel. You can do it on your own. You can do it with third-party firms. I know there's a lot of skepticism when working with third parties, especially for generating leads, generating opportunities. And I think one of the reasons is because a lot of people overpromise and then underdeliver. And the reason why they overpromise is because they pitch the wrong thing. So when we're talking about investors, they pitch the idea of we will help you raise capital. Or when we talk about deals, they pitch the idea of we will help you close deals. But they don't realize that a lot of that responsibility is ultimately up to you as a search fund, right? What they should say, at least from my perspective, is that we will make everything as simple as possible so that you can talk with qualified deals, qualified investors, and from that moment on, your return on time is going to be maximized. From that moment on, everything is up to you because you're the one having these conversations. You cannot expect somebody else to close the deals on your behalf or raise the money on your behalf. I hope that makes sense. And so one of the reasons why we've been quite effective in helping the people that we work with is because we're very upfront with them and we say, listen, if you're struggling in finding quality deal flow, if you have too many leads that are bad, or if you're not able to find the right investors for your deals, then what we can do for you is fill your calendar with qualified opportunities and make sure every single call you take has the highest probability of leading you to a deal or leading you to capital. But from that point on, the responsibility is onto you. Otherwise I would be doing the deal myself, right? If I need to raise the capital and close the deal on your behalf. I hope that makes sense. And so I feel there is this mismatch between what companies promise and what they actually deliver. And we don't like to do that because there's a huge difference between saying we will raise the capital for you or we will close the deal for you, if that makes sense, and saying we will take all the burden off your shoulders when it comes to originating these deals and originating these investors so that you can focus all your attention on closing these opportunities. So think about it this way. It's almost like saying we will take the marketing and prospecting efforts off of you so that you can focus all your time on closing deals. That will be kind of like the idea of the whole process. And it becomes a lot easier for search funds to deliver on that once all they need to do is talk with qualified people and close them, really, because they don't need to juggle between different things. They can just be laser focused on one thing, focus on the few, not the many, and ultimately narrow down on closing these deals. I feel it really comes down to making the most of what you have and realizing that sometimes taking care of the entire process is not beneficial for you, especially if you're working with a small team or by yourself. And I would say that the most important aspect of it all is that the longer you take to go through this process, the more painful it's going to become. And I'm talking to you because I've been in that situation, right? I spent 18 months searching, building up our systems. And as I was progressing, I realized that there was something I wasn't doing in the right way because I was putting in too much effort. It seemed like I was trying too hard and results were not coming. And so I was wondering, well, I cannot work any harder than that. So I must be doing something wrong. And in fact, the system I was using for finding these leads and filtering these opportunities was wrong. And so I rebuilt it. And once I rebuilt it, it worked much better. And it was a more dynamic way of finding leads because it was focused on a strategic approach that was based on different variables like the country we're operating in, the industry we're targeting, how receptive are these people to certain channels of communication, how can we filter these people in the right way, should we start with a tight pool of people that are highly qualified and remove friction in the qualification process, or we should start with a broader audience and then filter them down through multiple steps of selection. And as I started doing this for myself, for my company, for other companies too, it became evident that, again, the cookie cutter solution doesn't work. And therefore, most of the advice that people might share online, like there is this one tool that is going to fix all the problems for you, is probably incorrect, at least from my perspective and my experience. The reality of it is, if you're a search fund struggling with some kind of issue, the most important thing to realize is that the higher ROI activity is closing deals and closing investors. All the rest should come secondary. And once that is realized, is how we find somebody who can help us in mitigating these challenges. It can be someone in your team. If you're able to find someone who is experienced, kudos to you. It can be someone external like us. And then once you have understood all that, how we can build a strategy that works for us and what we're trying to accomplish, instead of just focusing on what everybody's doing, signing up for Zoom info and hoping for the best. That ain't something that I found to be working because lead generation for deals and for investors is becoming increasingly challenging. And if you are in this industry and you're doing this on your own, you probably realized it already. And so if you are really struggling with some of these issues, I think we might be able to help you, because we have a proprietary system that books calls predictably for search funds. Doesn't matter if you're looking for deals or investors. And then it helps you focus all your attention on these calls that are qualified so that you can get these results and this traction quicker. Then it all comes down to you, right? How many calls that are qualified can you handle? And then you can really push forward and focus on one thing that really matters. If you are struggling with some of these issues, as I just mentioned, we can certainly help you with that. And we help people already. And I feel, sometimes people try to do everything on their own because they feel they can find the right solution. But in some cases, it might be just better to consider an alternative option that's going to save you tons of time, resources, and money, and also enable you to, be laser focused on the objective. And so it's something for you to consider. You might find someone that can help you, that can be part of your team. That will be a great idea. You can work with somebody like us as well, or someone similar to us for that matter. The point is, if you're a search fund struggling with these issues, probably there's some change that you need to make in your process. Again, you can go watch some of the pipeline systems that we have built and take a look at those. They might be of help. But the point is, it's less of a technical problem. It's more of a strategic problem, at least from my perspective. And most people focus on the technicals too much, right? Because that's what they like doing. It's easier to be boxed into technical without thinking about the overall strategy. So if you're a search fund, hopefully these thoughts, ideas helped you. I think rethinking the way you find deals is the first step. Once you have broken down the process, understood what might be going wrong, then rebuild it, starting with simplicity in mind. And once you have that, see what comes at the end of the funnel and focus all your attention on that last aspect, which is closing. Those are just my thoughts on search funds and how we might be able to help you. Hopefully this adds some value to you. If you want to check out more resources, we have stuff on YouTube, we have stuff on our site that you can take a look at, and hopefully that can help you on your journey. So that's it.